Hey YouTube, welcome back. I've got a build here for you, but the entire thing is bugged. I'm gonna share the build with you because in theory, it's really, really cool. And I was very disappointed when I found out that the build was bugged, but it's cool enough that I want to share with you. So we have a result of one of the VisionGL Theorycrafting weeks. And the unique item that we built around this time was voted upon was Dark Shroud of Cinders. So the most important thing about this is that we have some fire aura synergy, which locks us into basically being a Spellblade, but there's a couple other options beyond that. Maybe being a mage, maybe being a Sorc, or maybe using the unique relic, Herkir's Vessel, in case you want to cheese some fire auras on a off mage class. But I digress. When we have our fire auras, per fire aura, we've increased void damage. So the biggest question about how to use the Dark Shroud of Cinders is we have so much % increased damage, assuming that we have 20 to 30 fire auras, and we can have more multipliers, generic more multipliers from whatever skill you're using. But the question is, how do you get flat damage? So you could use a void spell like Devouring Orb, but then how are you using a Herkir's Vessel? How are you going to go about it from there? So what we chose to do with our character, and I think what a lot of people tried to do, was make use of the Blade of the Forgotten Knight. So it gives us both melee void damage, because that can take advantage of the % void damage, but it also gives us spell void damage. Normally you have like adaptive damage on a wand, and adaptive damage becomes whatever damage is written on the skill. So if you have adaptive damage on a wand and you're playing Meteor, you're going to have fire damage, because Meteor is a fire skill by default. We can force flat void damage onto a skill, and then take advantage of all the % void scaling from having some fire auras going on because we're a Spellblade, and then we can make use of whatever more multipliers are on the skill itself. So this is what I tried, and I saw a couple other people try to go the Blade of the Forgotten Knight route as well, but we also saw a couple people, including myself, try to go really out of the way and include Sacrificial Embrace. So it's a very strange item, but I can simplify it for you. We have no crit multi is meaningless for us. We can't use crit multi. On crits, we have a 20 to 28% chance to gain a stack of something. So let's go attack a dummy and we'll watch the bottom of our screen. Let's go like this real quick to get rid of all of our stacks, and then I'll put my static back on. So as we attack and as we crit, you'll see that we gain some charges down here, this abyssal right, and we'll tack, 6 charges, 7 charges, 8 charges, 9 charges, 10 charges. So 10 charges, and we can discharge these whenever we want, but whenever you directly cast an elemental spell, each stack is consumed, and it gives that spell 10 flat damage, 10 flat void damage, and 10 void penetration per stack. So if you can generate 10 stacks very quickly, and then use one big spell, you're adding 100 flat damage, which is basically a staff, and 100 penetration. So if you can figure out how to use Sacrificial Embrace, if you can figure out how to get enough crit on a build that doesn't want crit multi, if you can figure out this item, the payoff is potentially very, very big. It even has some % void damage, some melee attack speed to tie the whole thing together. So that's how this item works. So we have a source of up to 100 flat damage here. We have a source of 35 to 50 flat damage here, and 35 to 50 flat damage here. So we have enough flat damage in our build to make use of Dark Shroud of Cinders for a spell build. So here's the idea. And again, this entire thing is bugged, but here's the idea. We were going to get a bunch of flat critical strike chance from Mana Strike, because we have this node over here that has no crit multi, because we don't care about crit multi, but plus 40 base crit. So if I can get plus, if I can get 100% increased critical strike chance, that doubles my crit from 40 to 80, and a little bit more than that means that I've capped crit. So if I've capped crit, that means every single attack or every single hit has a 22% chance of giving me a stack. So then if I can attack quickly, if I can use enchant weapon to give me attack speed, we can benefit off of this crit node here. Mana Arc is a sub skill of Mana Strike, and it should inherit this 40 base crit. So every time I right click, I can gain 2 stacks of this abyssal right, like I did right here. So we have 2 things, and we're attacking very quickly, generating a bunch of small hits, trying to stack up the abyssal right here. Mana Strike is a melee void skill, so it benefits from this. I guess it technically deals some damage. Mana Arc is a spell here, so that'll benefit from a couple of these spell void damage there. And then as we're attacking, we can also be surging and dashing around like this. Surge is another melee skill that could crit, could generate more charges, and it's going to gain static charges for us. So our Mana Strike will attack very quickly. We have static charges being built up from the static skill tree. We have Surge generating static for us as well. And don't mind me, let me respec this node real quick. And we are not discharging static like this, but we are building up these dormant energy stacks so that whenever we dash, we can build up these fire aura stuffs. So we want as many fire auras as possible by using melee attacks, by critting, and by using surge. We want as many static charges as possible by hitting with a melee attack, like in our static skill tree, and by using our surge up here. And then we also have Enchant Weapon to give us more attack speed, and it has another proc on it. And it doesn't crit very often, but it crits enough that it's something that's going to help us generate more Abyssal Rite stacks. And then static is what ties the entire room together. So our Mana Strike is going to deal a little bit of damage, but the point of this build is to have static on our bar, and then we would basically numlock it. It looks like it has a 5.6 second cooldown. It looks like it has a 6 second cooldown if I take off my helmet, but realistically, when you get to maximum stacks, you reset the cooldown of static. So you'll discharge, and then for the next 3 seconds after you discharge, every time you crit, you're going to gain additional charges. So this is not when you use a skill and crit. This is when you crit. So you can crit multiple enemies at the same time, and all of those give you +3 for this. So we have our AoE Mana Strike, we have our Zaps, we have our Mana Arcs as well, and then we have our Surge that is also going to crit additional enemies and give us more charges here. So instead of this being a 6 second cooldown or a 5.6 second cooldown, this will be like maybe a 3 second cooldown. So every 3-ish seconds, we are going to have a huge discharge from our static, which will gain 100 flat damage from this, 100 flat void damage, and 100 flat void penetration, and it'll benefit from statics more damage per charge. I showed you how Flame Ward's boring. I showed you how we're speccing Surge, which is the same as in-game, how we're speccing Mana Strike, which is the same as in-game, Enchant Weapon, which is, again, the same as in-game, and then static is slightly different because we need to get over here to the bottom left for the Surge node, but we don't need anything on the bottom here. The reason that my in-game character has this node here is that this build is bugged and it doesn't do anything. So I needed something that could kill monsters so that I could play the game. So here's the bug. The bug is, even though Sacrificial Embrace says when you directly cast an elemental spell, instant cast spells do not trigger Sacrificial Embrace. So static and the discharge from static is a instant cast elemental spell that you directly cast. It should work. It does not work. Another instance of this would be Tornado converted into fire and then converted into instant cast. If you do that, it will not work with Sacrificial Embrace. If you take off the instant cast from Fire Tornado, it does work the way that you expect. So something about the word instant cast is messing up these gloves, and it means that my entire build is bricked. Man! So that's the idea of the build. The idea was we have Mana Strike, high base crit, we attack a lot, we get to use Mana Arc as well, and then we are resetting the cooldown over and over and over. We have maybe 1, maybe 2 points into this to get to 150 maximum charges. I don't know if you want 200 charges. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you'd like to have this this kickstart node on the bottom right proccing as often as possible. So maybe 1 more point goes into overcharge. Maybe it stays at 2 points there, but I think that something about this is approximately correct here. For this build, you want at least 2 sources of flat void damage. Otherwise, you just won't have enough flat void damage in your build. But if the build works properly, I would try it with Blade of the Forgotten Knight and Sacrificial Embrace, and then I would try it either dual wielding, which is what I had tried out, but I would also try dropping the second sword and instead using a Bastion of Honor. So I can't really test this because the entire build is bugged, but it's worth testing if this gets bug fixed in the future. So let's look at the, I guess we can look at the rest of the build real quick. We'll just like mouse over things. For the passives, there's nothing particularly interesting here. We don't care about fire, cold, or lightning damage, so we're just going to grab some stuff with ward retention and as much attack speed as possible. Actually, let's look at this because I updated this most recently. So we have the ward retention up here, 26 points in the base tree. No points in Sork because we don't need anything here. For the Spellblade skill tree, we have all 8 points into Fire Aura, and then we have the Fire Aura stuff on the top right of the mastery as well. The rest of this, we don't care about melee damage. We're only trying to scale the Void as much as possible. So a lot of these nodes just don't do much for us, and we're going to skip them. We have some points up here into Arcane Warden. Or I guess whenever you gain points from Arcane Warden, you have this little proc that goes off. And this proc could crit. So I think it's worthwhile to put some points into this. You could also put some points into Spark Charge on melee hit. This would be a 25% chance to have a thing happen that could crit. And this is a 40% chance that you could hit and have a proc happen. So the idea of either the Stormblade node or the Warden's Echo node is that it's a node, it's a point that could crit, and that crit could give you Abyssal Right stacks for your Sacrificial Embrace. The rest of this, we have more attack speed, we have some dual wielding, if you are dual wielding, and then we have Surge cooldown recovery speed. This is great, just 8 points here, and then 10 points and 5 points for the ward per second. So we have a lot of ward, a lot of attack speed, and not much else from our mastery here. For the skills, we looked at the skills already, we talked a lot about that. For the itemization, we'd like to have one modifier here that says chance to cast Fire Aura on crit. We want that in 1, maybe 2 places in our character overall, but the rest of this is just cooldown recovery speed and some health regen. You're going to see health regen in my character here because I was trying to make use of Vessel of Strife because the additional ward generation is great, ward retention is great. The spell void damage is useful for my build as well, and the percent void damage is pretty useful as well, even though I'm probably going to have about 1200% increased void damage. This is still helpful. So I was thinking as long as this is so good, we might as well try to make use of it. And we have a lot of ward generation because we're a melee Spellblade character. So why not build some health regen so that the health regen can be converted into ward per second. So that's why you see health regen on my character here. We have the Dark Shroud of Cinders, we have the Bastion or dual wielding Blade of the Forgotten Knight, like we talked about. For the amulet, Void Penetration is pretty useful, but for the other prefix, maybe just crit chance to help you crit more consistently. Maybe some percent void damage would be nice there as well. You do want Armor Shred, you do want Frailty in your build, so if you can get LP Sacrificial Embrace, or maybe just dedicate both suffixes to the Bone Amulet, one to have Shred and the other one to have Frailty, that'd be a pretty good use of the suffixes on your amulet as well. For the rings, percent damage, crit chance, intelligence, those are the kinds of things you might be looking for. Because we're dealing so much void damage and we are basic attacking a good bit, you could also try to make use of a Siphon of Anguish, just because it gives you a bunch of relevant stats, and Doom is a nice to have. Even though your Doom's not going to be dealing so much damage, it'll deal some damage. So remember, Doom is a 4 stacks maximum, but it has a tremendously high base void damage ailment. For the blessings down here on the bottom, maybe some crit chance. Ideally, you would have Void Shred, just because you already have 100 penetration, ideally, from the Sacrificial Embrace, but having more Shred, more Void penetration would be a good thing. So I'd go Void Shred here. Lightning Resistance, great. Crit Avoidance or All Res, whichever one you get a good roll on it. And then I like to have percent armor and flat armor from these 2 blessings. If you'd like to go something else, that's fine, but I like working these into my builds just to be as tanky as possible. So that about does it for this character. We have a little bit of cooldown recovery speed for Surge, cooldown recovery speed for Surge, because we would like to Surge more often, because that gives us mobility, gives us safety, gives us invulnerability while surging, and it then helps us just generate more static charges and more fire auras, which become percent increased damage. So this build was going to be awesome. It would have been really fun to play. You attack really often. You're resetting the cooldown in your static, and you're basically numlocking your static so that it's always going off like every 2.5 or 3 seconds. I was really excited to play this character, but unfortunately because of the instant cast thing, we know that it's bugged, and hopefully it gets fixed in the future. If it does get fixed, and you played this build, tell me how it was, because I can't wait for someone to play it, because I think it's really cool. On that note, once we get microtransactions someday, once we get skill MTX, I would love to take this character and make my fire aura purple, and make my mana strike purple, and my surge purple, and then all my stuff purple. I think that would be the best use of microtransactions. But we gotta wait for multiplayer, we gotta wait for 0.9, we gotta wait for 1.0, we gotta wait for these things. So eventually they'll happen, and then someday, my build will look cool as hell. If it works, if it's not bugged. So, that's what we tried to do with Dark Shroud of Cinders. If you have other ideas about how to make use of Dark Shroud of Cinders, with weird, wacky ideas like this, or with something that you might consider more mainstream, I don't know if there is a mainstream use for this, but I'd love to see it. So if you got anything, drop by on Twitch, twitch.tv/ParryThePig. You can leave a comment in the comment section of this video, or drop by on Discord. It's a good place to be. If you have any questions about this build, you can always ask in the same places. But I appreciate you being here. I hope that your builds are less bugged than mine, and I'll see you next time.